All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling pool and spa chemistry.
Perfect timing. Everyone's dreaming of a refreshing dip this time of year.
Exactly. But, that crystal clear water might be hiding some secrets.
Yeah, it's like they say, don't judge a book by its cover. A clean look doesn't mean it's sanitized.
So true. We're talking about what's lurking beneath the surface.
Right. We're diving into the microscopic world of pool and spa chemistry.
And trust me, you don't need to be a chemist to get this. It's about understanding the basics.
Exactly. It's about keeping that water safe and healthy, which means understanding both sanitation and water balance.
Okay, so let's wade right in. Why is sanitation so important for pools and spas? I mean, lakes and rivers manage to stay relatively clean, right?
Well, they have a few advantages we don't. Think aeration, dilution, even those tiny little microbes that help break things down.
Ah, so our backyard pools don't have those natural cleaning crews working behind the scenes.
Not quite. Which is why we need to lend a helping hand. We have to create an environment that prevents those unwanted guests from crashing the party.
And by unwanted guests, we're talking about. Well, let's just say things we'd rather not think about ending up in the water.
Exactly. Everything from sweat and body oils to, well, you get the idea.
Okay, so we've established that those contaminants are not invited to the pool party. How do we keep them out?
Sanitizers. They are our first line of defense, the guardians of our sparkling oasis.
All right, so let's talk about the heavy hitters in the world of pool sanitation. Chlorine and bromine, right? What's the difference?
You got it. They both work in slightly different ways, but the end goal is the same, destroying those unwanted guests.
And I've heard there are so many different types of chlorine. Does it matter which one you use?
That's a great question, and it can seem confusing, but honestly, all chlorine eventually forms what's called hypochlorous acid.
Hypochlorous acid, that sounds intense. What's so special about it?
Well, that's the real MVP, the powerhouse that does the heavy lifting in the sanitation department.
So all those different chlorine products, liquid, tablets, even the gas, they all become this hypochlorous acid.
Exactly. It's like the superhero version of chlorine, actively patrolling your pool and neutralizing those contaminants.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. So we have this hypochlorous acid, our sanitizer superhero, working hard to keep the water clean. But then there's this other term I've heard, combined chlorine. And I know that's not a good thing. What's the difference?
You're right, combined chlorine isn't our friend. You see, as our superhero hypochlorous acid, or free chlorine, does its job, it can combine with those contaminants it's fighting.
Ah, so it's like our superhero is getting tired, worn out from battling those unwanted guests.
Exactly, and when that happens, it forms those chloramines, which is what we call combined chlorine.
And that's where that strong chlorine smell comes from, right? I always thought it meant there was just too much chlorine in the water.
That's a common misconception. More often than not, that strong smell means there's actually not enough free chlorine.
Really? So the smell is actually a sign that our superhero is getting overwhelmed and needs backup.
Exactly. It's a sign that the chlorine is working, but it's getting used up faster than it can keep up.
So what's the solution? How do we send in reinforcements for our hardworking hypochlorous acid? How will we give it a break?
That's where we bring in the big guns, shocking the pool.
Shocking the pool. Okay, that sounds a little intense. Tell me more.
It's not as scary as it sounds, I promise. Essentially, it's a way to superchlorinate the pool, to break down those pesky chloramines and boost the free chlorine levels back up.
Ah, so it's like hitting the reset button, giving our superhero a fresh start.
Exactly. Think of it as giving your pool water a quick burst of energy to keep everything running smoothly.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've got our sanitation strategy down. We're sending in hypochlorous acid to fight the good fight, shocking the pool when needed. But now I'm realizing there's another layer to this whole pool care game, right? We've covered the sanitation squad, but what about this whole water balance thing I keep hearing about?
You're right, water balance is just as crucial as sanitation. Think of it like this. Your body needs the right balance of everything to function properly. Your pool is no different.
Okay, so it's not enough to just eliminate the bad stuff. We need to create a harmonious environment for the water itself.
Exactly.
So it's all about balance, huh? Like
Yeah.
a delicate ecosystem.
Yeah.
What are the key players in this watery balancing act?
Well, first up, you've got your pH. That measures how acidic or basic the water is.
Like lemon juice versus baking soda.
Exactly. And for a pool, you want it pretty neutral, a little more towards the baking soda side.
Got it. So not too far in either direction.
Right. The ideal range is between 7.4 and 7.6. For spas, it can be a tad higher.
Okay, makes sense. But what happens if things get out of whack? Besides freaking out my test kit, I mean,
Oh, and imbalanced pH can cause all sorts of trouble. It can irritate swimmers' skin and eyes, make the chlorine less effective.
ouch, definitely don't want that. And I bet it's not great for the pool itself either.
You got it. It can even start to damage the equipment over time. Nobody wants their pool looking like a rusty shipwreck.
Yikes. Okay, so pH is a big deal. What's next on the water balance checklist?
So then we got total alkalinity.
Total what?
Alkalinity, think of it like this. pH can swing back and forth, right? Alkalinity is like a buffer, helping keep those swings in check.
Okay, I think I get it. So if pH is the captain steering the ship, alkalinity is the first mate making sure things don't go overboard.
That's a great analogy. Now, too little alkalinity and your pH is going to be all over the place.
Up and down and making everyone miserable, right?
You said it. But too much alkalinity and you'll have a hard time adjusting the pH at all.
Oh, so it's like it's locked in place, good or bad?
Pretty much. Plus, you might see cloudy water, even that scale buildup that's a pain to clean.
Yeah, no thanks. So we've got our captain or first mate, pH and alkalinity working together. Who else is on this crew?
Well, next up, we have to consider calcium hardness. Remember how we talked about water loving to dissolve things?
Yeah. It's like that giant chemistry experiment, always trying to break stuff down.
Exactly. So calcium hardness is basically how much dissolved calcium is in the water already. If it's too low, the water's going to try and get more, even if it means stealing it from your pool walls and equipment.
Oh no, so my pool could start dissolving itself? That's kind of terrifying.
Right, you want to mess with the pool structure. But too much calcium is a problem too. That can lead to, you guessed it, more scale.
It's always about finding that sweet spot, isn't it?
Exactly. Goldilocks was onto something. Now, last but not least, we've got total dissolved solids, or TDS.
PDS, that sounds like a whole alphabet soup of things.
It kind of is. It's basically a measure of everything dissolved in the water.
So minerals, salts, even those sanitizer byproducts we talked about earlier, everything gets lumped together.
Yep. Think of it like a
Like that junk drawer everyone has. A little bit of everything in there.
perfect analogy. And just like that drawer, when it gets too full, problems arise.
Like what kind of problems? Does the water get, like, too heavy or something?
It can start to feel different, that's for sure. But more importantly, your sanitizer can't do its job as well with all that extra stuff floating around.
It's like trying to find anything in that junk drawer, right? The more cluttered it is, the harder it gets.
You got it. Plus, high TDS can lead to cloudy water, even corrosion in some cases.
Man, this is a lot to keep track of. It's starting to feel like I'm back in high school chemistry.
Yeah.
No kidding. It's a lot to remember, all these moving parts.
I hear you. But the good news is, you don't need to be a chemist to keep your pool sparkling. The key is regular testing. Think of it like a weekly checkup for your pool.
Okay, so our trusty test kit is our friend. Check the levels, adjust as needed. That seems manageable.
Exactly. And those kits are pretty user-friendly these days. No need for a microscope or anything.
That's reassuring. All right, so we're testing regularly, keeping those levels in check. Anything else we can do to really up our pool care game? I'm feeling like I could be a pro at this.
I love the enthusiasm. And, there are some pro tips. One of the biggest ones, gradual is always better. When you're adding chemicals, go slow, test often.
Okay, so no dumping in a whole bucket of chlorine and hoping for the best.
Exactly. It's all about finesse. And remember, your pool is part of the world around it, right? So things like sunlight, rain, even how many people are swimming, it all affects that balance we talked about.
So I should probably check things extra carefully after a big pool party or a thunderstorm.
Exactly. And speaking of rain, that's a good reminder about the importance of fresh water. Our source material really emphasized that.
Wait, really? Just adding more water can make a difference?
Absolutely. It sounds simple, but fresh water is like a reset button for your pool. Flushes out excess stuff, helps bring everything back into balance. It's the cheapest, most effective chemical you can add.
Wow, who knew plain old water was the secret weapon? So much for needing a degree in chemistry, huh? This has been incredibly helpful. I feel much more prepared to tackle my pool care routine now.
Glad to hear it. Remember, keeping that water balanced and sanitized is the key to a happy, healthy swimming experience.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll let you go enjoy those crystal clear waters. Thanks for diving in with us today.